my one actual book. Hello my loves and welcome back. We are officially in February and that means it's time for a monthly wrap up. We're going to talk about all the books that I read in January. I actually managed to read 6 books, which I thought that I'd maybe be able to finish another 1 or 2, and I was still reading, but we got a new kitten last week and we had a bit going on before that, so the month has actually been quite busy, kind of more social calendar wise and just like bits and bobs going on. And I've just been a bit less focused on reading, but I'm currently in the middle of 4 books still, but I'll talk about those later. But the first one that I finished, I mostly read this in December, but a few days into January, I finished Queen of Shadows, which I was so buzzing about. This is book 4 in the Throne of Glass series, and this is the one where it finally felt like a real high fantasy story. The writing style took a step up, like compared to the first 2 books, which I've literally read better fan fictions than that. Like, I was quite surprised that it had gone through the traditional publishing route and got published with the writing how it was. So to see it progress quite quickly from, obviously my side, I wasn't reading the books as they were coming out, to the point where it's at now. And I really loved the direction the story was going in. I love all the new characters. I especially love Manon, even more so going into the next books. She, I think, is my absolute favourite. I wish there was a whole series just about her, to be honest. But obviously, as this is the 4th book in a series, I don't want to go into too many details, but I just thought this was a really great continuation. I gave it a 4.25 stars on Storygraph, and that's mainly because, again, it just didn't hit that 5-star feeling to me, and I felt like the end dragged on a bit. And I understand, because then you go into books 5 and 6 and they follow separate characters on separate journeys. I'm currently doing the tandem read, but I get that she was kind of trying to, wrap up everyone's stories to that point before you would be spending one book with only a few of the characters and then the next book with the next set of characters. But I just felt like there was a perfect point for it to end, and she just didn't end it there. And this definitely happened with Heir of Fire as well. I remember feeling a bit of a similar way. So I just think it would benefit from having a nicely rounded ending without having to go to every single character almost multiple times to have a little special wrap up just for them. I just don't think it's necessary. But I still thought it was really enjoyable, and I'm excited for where the rest of the series is going. And then the next book that I read is the only physical book that I finished this month. The rest of them have literally all been on my iPad. And that is My Sister, the Serial Killer. This is a thriller story about a woman whose sister starts harming and killing her partners at the time. And the main character, Korede, has a crush on one of the doctors at the hospital that she works at as a nurse. And then her sister starts forming a relationship with him, and she is worried about what her sister's going to do. I thought this was really interesting. I thought at first that the characters had quite a lot to say, and the fear of not wanting to ruin your family and having those bonds with someone versus what you should do morally. I really enjoyed the first half of this, and I'm down for unlikable characters and morally grey characters, but I just felt like the ending and where the character arc went, it's a very short book, but I just felt what the characters decided in the end and how it was done just fell a little bit flat for me. I just think it could have been discussed in a bit of a more interesting way. But it was still very enjoyable, and for only a 226 pages, so I literally read this in 2 days. And I do definitely think it's worth picking up. It just didn't quite land for me in the end, but I can see why it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize in 2019. And I think I'd definitely be interested to see what Braithwaite writes next, or I say next, what other books she has out. I'm sure she has more than just this one, but that's the only physical read. And then after that, after such a big fantasy book, finally getting that finished, and then a thriller, I was just like, I just want something easy, breezy, and cute. So I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which is the first in the Dream Harbour series. Now, over Christmas, I read The Christmas Tree Farm. And I really loved that. I loved the characters. I thought the town was really cozy and cute. And obviously, with an interconnected series, you don't have to read them in order, but there was obviously all the characters and couples from the previous books. I think the Christmas Tree Cafe is the third one of the series. So I just thought after that I would go back to the beginning and then start going through. And while this was really cute, it was a lot more insta love, and I didn't find the characters quite as interesting. And I also feel like a lot of the characters are going to feel like the same person. And I do think with these types of books, not to necessarily stereotype all romance, but you kind of know what you're getting into with them and what the characters will be like. And I'm going to be honest, that's why I wanted to read it and why I did enjoy it. I think it'll be interesting to see if I like the couples in the next books following this, because I definitely preferred the ones from the Christmas Tree Farm, but I gave this 3.5 stars. I also forgot to mention that My Sister the Serial Killer I gave 3 stars as well. And then I moved on to a classic, and it's a short one and one I've been meaning to read for ages, but that is Carmilla, which is one of the OG vampire stories. And I was actually really surprised how easy to read this was. I thought the writing style was so almost ahead of its time, because I've read other books from a similar sort of era and they've been quite difficult to get through, but this was really easy. This was originally published in 1872, and all I kind of knew going in, obviously it's such a short story anyway, but all I knew going in was that it had inspired Dracula. It was an original vampire story, and it's kind of the starting point for the lesbian sapphic vampire trope. Now, I thought this was going to have gone a little bit further into that, but there was only kind of a mild element of infatuation and obsession between Carmilla and Laura. I feel like it just hit the spot for what I was wanting from it going into it. It was spooky, it was atmospheric. I liked how they figured out that she was a vampire going through it, and then the ending was actually really action-packed, which was quite a surprise as well. But yeah, I gave this a 3.5 and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it if you want to give it a go. It's only about 100 pages, so it's more than worth the time. I think this is on Kindle Unlimited as well, but obviously it's in the public domain now, so you can read it for free regardless. And then next, I finished a book that has been really popular. I think it was one of the Waterstones book of the month or the year or something like that. I know it only came out last year, but that is Watermoon. I thought going into this that this was going to be a kind of magical realism fantasy, Japanese whimsical vibes, and while it kind of was, the actual story of this is that it's a Studio Ghibli kind of vibe adventure where there is a pawn shop in some kind of alternate magical world, and people from the real world end up walking into it not realising when they're just intending to go to a ramen shop. And on the first day of the pawn shop owner's daughter taking over the shop, she discovers that her dad has gone missing, and someone walks into the pawn shop and offers to help her find her dad. I just found this really difficult to get through from the beginning, to be honest. I thought the writing didn't particularly flow very well for me, even though the premise sounded interesting and I was intrigued at the start of who these characters were, what these kind of monster characters were, and what had happened and what the adventure was going to be. But as it went on, I just got so sick of both of these characters and how much of a slog it felt to get through. I felt like the romance was really unnecessary. There was no connection to these characters at all, and I don't feel like there was a connection between them either. Like, I just don't really understand where it came from, apart from they were on an adventure together. There was no kind of yearning, there was no growing feelings towards each other. And then I had to read in one single day, I guess this is a bit of a spoiler, but whatever, there is a Hitler reference because they're talking about big events that happened in the real world's history. So there's a Hitler reference which totally pulled me out of the story. I think they mentioned the Titanic as well. That literally just, like, I was already finding it hard to stay in it, and then that just threw me out. And then in the same day, I think it was literally within 100 pages of the book, I had to read the main male character suddenly having the woman's boob just in his mouth. Like, there was just tits in his mouth, and I just thought, this is so unnecessary. I felt like I was hate reading it after that. which is such a shame because the actual story should have been fun and it should have felt whimsical. I wanted it to give me that kind of almost nostalgic vibe of watching a Studio Ghibli film, but it just felt really flat. I gave it 2 stars, but I almost feel like that's a bit generous. You know, when there's a book that you feel like everyone else has loved and it's been kind of hyped up a bit and you just feel like you have read a completely different book to everyone else. So if you did read and enjoy this, please let me know because I feel baffled. I feel very confused about why this is so popular, other than the fact that it's got a beautiful cover. So then after that, I just wanted to read something that I knew I would enjoy. Looking down at the rating for this, I think I might actually even bump it up. But I read Bookshops and Bone Dust, and this is the second book within the Legends and Lattes series, but it's actually a prequel story of Viv before she went on her full journey as a mercenary as part of a group on all these adventures before she then settles down and wants to open the coffee shop in the next story. I loved this. I loved the characters. It felt so cozy. I loved the bookshop setting. I think I enjoyed this more because it wasn't Viv stopping somewhere to settle down. The first book is she opens a cafe and she's trying to get that to work while something else is going on. This one is a lot more complex because she gets injured and is stuck in this town while recovering, so is just trying to find things to occupy her time with, and meets the owner of a bookshop, a few other characters, and then a story kind of progresses from there while she's waiting for the rest of the crew that she's a part of to come back. This was just so wholesome. This really, really tugged at my heartstrings. I loved the connection, like the relationship between all the characters and how not everything is the right place and the right time. Initially, I have given this a 4.75, but I genuinely think I might just bump it up to a 5 stars. I really loved this, and I also love how in this world it's like D&D style fantasy in terms of there being all these different species, and because of that there's no questions about genders and sexuality. It's just a really wholesome world. It's a low stakes fantasy. There's not some big high-end plot going on. There's not a big adventure. It's just characters trying to deal with their lives in that moment and then something happening at the same time where there might be a bit of a fight. But that's all of the books that I have finished. So just looking at my stats, I'll probably put it up on the screen as well, but I finished 6 books. I read 2,537 pages, and my average rating was 3.5, which is quite a nice rounded number really. All fiction. There was a few days towards the end of the month where I wasn't reading because of our little kitten that we got. So, like I said at the start, I am still in the middle of 4 books. As you can guess, I am still listening to Alchemized. I've been really enjoying getting back into the story, and I've listened to quite a few hours recently. The part that I'm at is I'm nearly at the end of part 2, so there's a lot happening for it to then go back to the present day moment, and I am so intrigued to see how that bit's going to wrap up, and then if the next part is going to be her remembering everything that we've just lived through with her. So that is very exciting. I think I've got about... how much have I got left? Let's check. I'm just over 28 hours out of 36, so I've got less than 10 hours left, which feels like such an achievement. This is such a long book. I'm going to hold myself to this. I'm definitely going to get this finished this month. Alchemized will be in my February wrap up. And then on my Kindle app, I've been reading The Baby Dragon Cafe, which is super cute. I thought, again, it was going to be similar vibes to the Dream Harbour series. This is not quite as well written, but it's quite fun. I love the dragon element of this. I'm about 45% of the way through, so that should be quite quick to finish when I actually make time for it. I've just been doing a little bit more brain rotting recently, which isn't great, but you know, we move. Everyone does that. I've been playing a lot of Candy Crush. And then I'm still in the middle of my tandem read. I think it's hilarious that when I was filming literally only a few weeks ago, I was like, oh yeah, I think I can get that done in January. I was wrong. So I am this far through, which is not much at all, but so much has happened. So now I feel like I am locked in, like I want to be locked in. It's just a lot of effort going back and forth. Like, you feel like you want to be really absorbed into it. So because I've not necessarily given myself that time, I don't want to pick it up when I can only read like a page and a half at a time. In Empire of Storms, I am 175 pages in. I've just got to chapter 19, and I think I messed up somewhere and didn't switch when I was meant to, or switched at the wrong point, because in Tower of Dawn, I've got to get past the next tab at chapter 13, which I'm literally like half a page away from, all the way to chapter 17 before I switch back. But I feel like I could finish these this month. I really want to finish these this month because I got so many more physical books that I want to start, including the final of this. I think it's called Kingdom of Ash, but that's about 1,000 pages long, and we all know how long it's taken me to read Alchemized, so we'll see how that goes. That's everything that I finished in January and what I'm still currently reading. So let's see how much I can get done in February. I hope you guys have had a great reading month in January, and I will see you with another video soon. Bye guys. This is Milk. This is the new edition. I wonder how much she'll have grown by the time it's the next wrap up. Bye everyone.